everybody, my name is Rebecca Davidson, and it has been a pleasure to be in class with you all this semester. I hope, despite any challenges or changes from COVID, that it was a good semester for you all. I'm excited to share about the final project with you guys. I did my ethnographic interview on a friend of mine. She grew up in Vietnam and has only recently been in the States pursuing a degree in youth ministry. So it was very neat to be able to listen to her stories and her share about her home life. She was super excited to share with me, had a lot to say, very well knowledged, and so I'm excited to share some with you guys. I think the 3 points that were most interesting to me, most unexpected to me, was the diversity of culture within Vietnam, what the major beliefs concerning religion are, and the modern stance that the younger generations currently have. So first, the diversity of culture within the country was shocking for me to learn about, because I guess I expected the country to share one major culture and then there'd be maybe small differences, but she was explaining to me that the urban culture, the city culture, is very, very different than the people who live in the mountains or the countryside or the rural areas. And so she grew up in the city. She grew up in one of the major cities in Vietnam, so she was able to share a lot about her experience there, but she also knew a lot about the mountainous people. So those in the city would be more modernized, more industrial, have office jobs, and things like that. And those in the mountains would work in agriculture, they would work with animals and herding, and they would often be in the form of tribes. And so that was neat to learn. I think one of the most major examples she gave me was pertaining to government and how the cultures differ very drastically there. So in the city, well, the country of Vietnam is social republic. So the president is elected by a council and a prime minister, but when you boil down to local government, the people do have a say in like who is their governing mayor and some of the people on that council. So that's kind of how it works as far as the urban areas and the urban government, but with the rural areas, it's very much a different story. So while the overarching government is still the same, there's still a president over the entire country. For the most part, though, the government leaves the rural areas alone and the rural areas leave the government alone. They work together as far as like providing crops and food and money and things like that to help each other out. But for the most part, there is not the same give and take within the rural area and the government as there is between the urban areas and the government. There's no police enforcement in the rural areas unless there's a war or there's something big going on that's disrupting peace in the rural areas. In the rural areas, there is usually a chief and a tribe and sometimes a council within that. And so that was really cool for me to think about. It almost seemed like they were two very different countries kind of living within the same, big country. So that was really neat to learn about. I think the second thing that was very interesting to me was what the major religious beliefs were. I guess as an Asian country, I assumed that it would be Buddhism. And in times past, that was the major religion. But she was explaining to me that now the major religious belief is actually atheism. And that was a shock to me. And she continued to say, like, Buddhism is still present, and so is ancestral worship. That is another very common belief. And Christianity is there. Her dad is a pastor, and so she was able to speak from experience how Christianity is within the culture. Religion in Vietnam is a very private thing. It's not spoken of at work. It's not spoken of in school. It's not spoken of on the streets. Obviously, like, there are some things that would make it very obviously what religion somebody believes. If a monk is walking by, you'd know he would be Buddhist. But besides that, it is a very private thing and it's not shared. So she was explaining how different it is as far as evangelism goes in the United States as opposed to evangelism in Vietnam. I learned a lot about ancestral worship. It is the belief that is hardest for children to leave. So with Buddhism, with Christianity, with atheism, if a child differs from their parents and their beliefs, it is a little bit easier to be accepted. But with ancestral worship, that is a shame. I mean, it is an honor shame culture, but it is a huge shame and dishonor, disrespect to the family and the ancestors for a child to leave that. So that was really neat to kind of wrap my head around. I think the last thing that was different than I expected was that the younger generation is fighting a lot for equality. So while traditional male headship is still respected within the culture, it is not the same as it has been in years past. The woman is not expected to the fight is that the women are not expected to be as silent, or there is a fight for more equality in the workplace, in the home, in government, and that was really interesting to me. I didn't think that there would be such a similarity to the American culture that we have, who is also fighting for equality. So the younger generations do really resemble our younger generation a lot, as far as equality in, religions, equality in education, equality in gender roles. And so that was really enlightening to learn about, and something that was really unexpected to me. There are still traditions and there is a lot of respect within the culture, but that was just really neat, I guess, to see how our cultures compare in the same way and how they also differ in a lot of ways. So I really enjoyed talking to her, and I hope that you enjoyed learning more about Vietnam and the culture there as well. Have a great rest of your semester.